In a forgotten pocket of the Colorado mountains, in a town so still and unchanged it seemed lost in time, a quiet man lived a life of solitude, tucked away behind the hum of engines and the silence of memory. Eli Dawson, a humble mechanic, passed his days in routine, his hands busy with old bolts and rusted dreams, until everything shifted one fog-laced morning. That morning began like any other, shrouded in the low hush of mist curling between pine-covered ridges. But within that stillness, destiny stirred. A small figure appeared from the dense woods behind his garage, barefoot, dirt-smudged and alone. She moved like a ghost through the morning haze, a child no older than 7, carrying a story that didn't quite make sense and eyes too wide for someone so young. What began as an ordinary day was about to unravel into something extraordinary. A quiet man and a lost girl, 2 lives that might have otherwise remained strangers, were about to collide in a way that would ripple far beyond either of them. This wasn't a story about superheroes or dramatic rescues. No, this was a story of timing, tenderness, and the kind of silent courage that changes everything. Sometimes the smallest step, a helping hand, a warm drink, a red pin on a map, can echo louder than any grand gesture. So breathe deep, let your heart open. If you're drawn to stories that mend broken hearts and awaken something true in the soul, settle in. This one's for you. It all began when Eli Dawson, a man known more for fixing engines than making waves, marked a curious red dot on Google Maps. Hours later, a helicopter descended beside his garage, slicing the mountain air with urgency. Ashford, Colorado was the kind of place even mapmakers forgot. Nestled among jagged ridges and veiled by evergreen shadows, it was more rumor than town. A resting place for the weary, or a hiding place for those wanting to be lost. Eli wasn't hiding anymore, not exactly. He just wasn't searching for anything either. Life had narrowed into one quiet lane. His garage, Dawson's Auto and Repair, sat alone on the edge of town. Its cracked siding, rust-creased tin roof, and hand-painted sign barely held together the memory of better days. The place smelled like grease, old stories, and something unspoken. Eli, now 46, stood bent over the engine of a 92 Ford, sleeves rolled up, country music hissing from an ancient radio in the corner. He preferred things that didn't ask for much. Old trucks, worn tools, and Johnny Cash tunes drowned in static. Years ago, he'd been a firefighter in Denver. He'd charged into burning homes, dragged people from wreckage, and tried once to save a child caught too deep in the smoke. The fire took more than lives that night. It stole his sleep, carved guilt into his bones, and finally silenced him. Ashford had offered quiet, and he took it. But that quiet shattered the moment he heard the hesitant crunch of gravel outside. Visitors didn't come unannounced, certainly not on foot. Wiping his hands, Eli stepped into the foggy light. There, on the edge of his lot, stood the child. Her coat was too thin, her feet bare and raw from cold, dark hair tangled around her cheeks like a snare, and her eyes, deep, unblinking, locked onto his with quiet desperation. "Hey there," Eli called gently, stepping closer like one might approach a startled animal. "Are you okay?" No answer. Just that fixed stare. Kneeling slowly, Eli kept his voice soft. "My name's Eli. This is a safe place. What's yours?" A pause, then a whisper. "Maya." "That's a pretty name," he offered. "Are you hurt?" A single shake of the head. "Is your mom or dad nearby?" Another pause. "Mama's sleeping, in the car." Eli's brow furrowed. "What car?" She lifted a trembling hand and pointed toward the woods. "It went off the road. Mama didn't wake up." The words struck him like a blow. Instincts flared to life, those old, buried reflexes from his rescue days. His eyes scanned the tree line. There were crude trails back there, unfit for driving this time of year, yet somehow they'd ended up there. "Okay," he said softly. "Thank you for telling me, Maya. Let's get you warm, then I'll go check on your mom." She hesitated, then nodded. Her hand in his was ice cold. Inside, Eli wrapped her in an emergency blanket, started a kettle, and stirred cocoa into an old Christmas mug. She cradled it like treasure, her silence thicker than the fog. He stepped outside again, phone in hand, no signal. Not even a flicker. Back inside, he gently asked, "Do you know how long you were walking?" She shrugged. It was dark, then light. His stomach turned. If there was a crash out there, time was everything. He fired up his computer, opened Google Maps, and zoomed into the wooded area she'd indicated. No visible roads. Still, he dropped a red pin and typed, "Possible crash. Child found. Access limited." Coordinates approximate. A digital message in a bottle. When he returned, she was asleep on his old couch, her arms wrapped around the cocoa mug, curled beneath a quilt that had belonged to his mother. He watched her for a long time, heart heavy with something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. By noon, the sun had finally begun to burn through the fog. Eli sat on his porch, second cup of coffee steaming in his hands, gaze drifting toward the forest. Her words echoed again. Mama's sleeping in the car. It went boom. He had to know. Leaving a note on the table, he packed a first aid kit, grabbed an old walkie-talkie and flashlight and stepped into the woods. The trail was barely a trail, more a memory of one. After nearly an hour, he spotted it, chrome glinting through branches. A black SUV, overturned, crumpled against rock. The door was ajar, airbag deflated, windshield spiderwebbed, but no one inside. "Maya's mom," he called. Silence. He took photos, noted GPS coordinates, then hurried back. When he burst into the garage, it was too quiet. "Maya?" No reply. Panic clutched his chest until he saw her, crouched by the old doghouse Jasper used to sleep in. Her arms hugged her knees, her gaze distant. "I found the car," he said gently, kneeling beside her, "but no one was there. We'll figure it out, okay?" She nodded. "Mama's name is Charlotte Lennox." Eli froze. Charlotte Lennox. The name echoed through every magazine article, every tech headline. CEO of Cygnus Technologies, a household name in Silicon Valley, and now her daughter was curled up barefoot in his backyard. "You're Maya Lennox?" "Yes, but Mama says only to tell people if it's safe." Eli's mind reeled. A car crash. No mother, no search parties, silence wrapped around the mystery like a warning. Later that night, after soup and toast by the wood stove, Maya slept again beneath his mother's quilt, clutching a stuffed bear he'd found in the lost and found box. Eli sat nearby, staring at headlines. There'd been a kidnapping threat 2 years ago. No recent photos of Maya. Charlotte Lennox had gone quiet. If someone wanted her gone, truly gone, they might want it quiet. And now the girl was here. The wind shifted that morning, colder and strange. Eli felt it the second he stepped outside. The trees whispered. Something had changed. Inside, Maya stirred, still clutching her bear. Eli stood by the door, coffee in hand, and looked toward the sky. Whatever this was, it was only just beginning. A sharp, sudden ping shattered the stillness of the morning. Eli blinked, startled out of his focus. His hands, calloused and smudged with grease, moved instinctively, snatching up his phone from the cluttered workbench. 1 bar. Just one. Barely there, but enough. The signal had finally reached him. He stared at the screen, heart suspended in the moment between hope and hesitation. Then, a flicker of validation. The GPS had locked in. The message he'd sent the previous day through Google Maps had finally gone through. His fingers trembled slightly as he refreshed his inbox. Nothing. But the map pin he'd dropped, along with his hastily scribbled note, "Possible car crash. Child found nearby," was now live. A red marker now blinked in the digital ether, visible to anyone who might stumble upon it or search with the right parameters. It was real now. Tangible. It existed in a space beyond these lonely ridges, beyond the reach of his isolated garage. A fragile thread cast out into the chaos of the wider world, hoping someone, anyone, might follow it back to them. Then, another ping. This one sharper, more urgent. A text message. Unknown number. "Is this Eli Dawson?" "This is Homeland Emergency Operations. You reported a child. Please confirm." Eli's pulse roared in his ears. His thumb flew across the screen. "Yes. Her name is Maya Lennox, age 7. Says her mother was in a vehicle crash. Coordinates approximate. SUV located. Driver missing." The reply was almost immediate. "Understood. Do not relocate the child. Keep her secured. Response en route. ETA 90 minutes. Expect aerial arrival." Eli read the last line twice. Aerial. A helicopter. Here. In his dusty, forgotten corner of the mountains where no one came unless they were lost or broken, someone was coming. Someone official. He turned to Maya. She had just begun to stir, rubbing the sleep from her eyes, hair sticking up in chaotic tufts, looking impossibly small in the clarity of morning light. "Morning, kiddo," he said softly. "How you feeling?" She blinked at him, shrugged and mumbled, "Okay, hungry." He smiled, relieved at her normalcy. "Good. I can fix that." As the scent of eggs and toast began to fill the garage kitchen, cooked up in his old cast-iron skillet, Eli spoke gently over his shoulder, not wanting to overwhelm her. "Hey, Maya, someone's coming, to help you, and your mom." She paused mid-bite, wide eyes lifting. Who? I'm not sure, he said honestly. But I think they know who you are. Maya's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Will Mama be okay? Elle's voice softened. I hope so, kiddo. We're going to find out real soon. After breakfast, they sat outside in the cold morning light. Maya perched on an old milk crate, Eli on the porch steps. The mountains around them whispered with wind and pine. And then it came, a faint hum, carried on the air like a distant echo of something foreign. Maya's head snapped up. Is that? Eli rose to his feet, scanning the sky with practiced caution, and then he saw it. Emerging over the tree line like a shadow birthed from the clouds, a black helicopter, sleek and silent, no visible markings. It hovered with eerie grace, then descended slowly into the open gravel lot. Pine needles swirled, dust rose. The air thrummed with power. Eli instinctively stepped in front of Maya. The chopper touched down with surgical precision. Its blades slowed. 2 men stepped out, one with a comms earpiece, the other carrying a silver case. They moved with purpose, not the casual demeanor of local responders. These were federal, maybe higher. The taller man approached. Mr. Dawson? Eli nodded slowly, cautiously. I'm Agent Harlan, Department of Homeland Security. This is Agent Ree. We're here on behalf of Charlotte Lennox. At the name, Maya's small body clung to Eli's leg. She looked up, tears welling. She's alive? Eli asked quickly. Yes, Harlan confirmed. Found near the crash site early this morning. Unconscious, but stable. Maya exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for 2 long days. Her little face crumpled under the release of fear. Eli crouched beside her, wrapping one arm around her thin shoulders. She's in medical care now, Harlan added, voice gentler. She's been asking for her daughter. You found us because of the map pin? Eli asked. Harlan nodded. It flagged our system. Certain names carry automatic alerts. You probably didn't know it, Mr. Dawson, but you just saved someone very important. Eli shook his head. She's a little girl, that's all I needed to know. The agents exchanged a glance. We'll need to debrief you briefly, Agent Ree said. And Miss Lennox has requested you accompany her daughter to the hospital, if you're willing. Me? She says Maya trusts you. Maya tugged at Eli's jacket, eyes wide. Please come. He paused only a moment before nodding. Let me grab my jacket. 20 minutes later, the helicopter lifted off again, this time with Eli and Maya inside. The mountains fell away beneath them, growing smaller with each second. Maya leaned against him, quiet and tired. Eli looked down at her, this little soul who'd somehow tilted his world in less than 2 days. He had lived alone for so long, hidden, really. But now something was different. Maybe everything was. He wondered, for the first time in years, where this road might lead, and whether he was ready to follow it. The hospital was nothing like he'd imagined. It wasn't public, it wasn't chaotic. It was a glass palace, sterile, silent, with private elevators and white hallways guarded by men in suits. Maya clung to his hand, her small fingers gripping tight as they moved through that cold, clinical stillness. Outside room 312, a nurse, no name tag, but eyes that missed nothing, spoke. She's stable. Minor concussion, bruised ribs. She's been asking for Maya. Before permission could be given, Maya let go of Eli's hand and ran forward, the door swinging open under her momentum. Charlotte Lennox lay propped in a pristine hospital bed, dark hair loose, an oxygen tube draped across her nose. The moment Maya burst in, her eyes opened. Mama? Her voice cracked on the word. Charlotte opened her arms. Maya flew into them. Eli stepped back, unsure if he should remain. But then Charlotte's eyes found his, sharp, unreadable at first, then softening. She mouthed something he couldn't catch, whispered something to Maya. The girl turned back. Mama wants you to stay. He hesitated. Mr. Dawson, Charlotte said, firm, even in her exhaustion. Please. He stepped in quietly and took the corner chair. The nurse closed the door behind them. Maya curled up beside her mother, head on her shoulder. Charlotte stroked her daughter's hair, slow and steady. For a long time, no one spoke, and it wasn't awkward. It was sacred. You found her, Charlotte said at last. She walked out of the woods, Eli replied, voice rough, right into my garage. You fed her, kept her safe, dropped that map pin. Her eyes shimmered, but her voice remained composed. Most people wouldn't have bothered, or worse, called the press. I don't like cameras, Eli replied. They're too loud. Charlotte smiled faintly. We have that in common. After a pause, she asked, Do you have children? No, never married. She talks about you, she said. Told the medics you made her cocoa, let her use your dog's blanket. You gave her kindness. That's all she needed, Eli replied. Kindness. Charlotte looked at him for a long time. It's not a small thing, not these days. And then she made him an offer. Not charity, not thanks. A proposal. On the table beside her, a folder. A non-profit initiative, mechanical repairs for veterans, single parents, working-class folks who couldn't afford to fix what kept them moving. I need someone who understands engines, she said, but also someone who understands people. I'm not built for boardrooms, Eli said. This isn't a boardroom. It's a garage. Your garage. Eli didn't answer, but he took the folder. Back in Ashford, everything looked the same. The air smelled like cedar. The tools hadn't moved. But he had changed. The proposal sat folded in his jacket. He hadn't read it. Not yet, because he didn't know who he was now. But when the next helicopter came, green, military marked, he knew this time it was for him. The man who stepped out didn't come as a soldier. He came as someone who'd seen something rare, a man who did the right thing, simply because it was right. You did something remarkable, he said. But Eli shook his head. A little girl walked into my garage. I did what anyone would do. The man smiled. That's where you're wrong. Chris let her gaze drift slowly across the cluttered garage. Tools hanging like memories, grease stains on the concrete floor, the faint scent of old pine smoke lingering in the air. Then, with deliberate calm, she looked back at him. Most people don't listen, she said quietly. Most people don't believe. Most people don't drop a map pin that ends up saving a billionaire's life. Eli's jaw tensed and something sharp flickered behind his eyes. That's not why I did it, he said firmly, almost defensively. I know, Hendrik replied gently, stepping forward, and that's exactly why we're here. At a nod from Hendrik, one of his assistants stepped forward, carrying a sleek, protective case. With care, they opened it, revealing 2 items, a thick envelope and a gleaming silver medallion etched with a symbol Eli didn't recognize. What's this? Eli asked, his voice low. A commendation, Hendrik replied, and a formal acknowledgement. Quiet, like we figured you'd prefer, but really real. Eli stared at the envelope in his hand, feeling the weight of it, not just physically, but symbolically. I didn't ask for any of this, he murmured. We know, Hendrik said. We also know Charlotte Lennox made a significant donation in your name to the First Responder Relief for Ashford's volunteer fire department. Eli blinked in confusion. She said it was your idea. It wasn't, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Hendrik smiled faintly. Maybe it was hers, or maybe she just knew it's where your heart really lives. There was a pause, silent, heavy, meaningful. Then Hendrik said something that would linger in Eli's mind long after the sound of rotor blades faded. You're not the kind of man who saves lives for headlines, Mr. Dawson, but the world needs to remember what that kind of man looks like. With that, the team packed up, their work here done. The helicopter blades whirred to life, the machine lifted into the sky, and then it was gone, leaving only the hush of wind and the stillness of the world behind. Eli remained standing in the silence, the envelope gripped in one hand, the medallion in the other. For the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. As dusk began to settle and the shadows deepened across the garage floor, his phone vibrated quietly in his pocket. The screen lit up with a message from an unfamiliar number. She's doing better. Sitting up. Asking for Coco. CL. 7 simple words. No emojis, no punctuation flourish, no name signed at the bottom. Yet they spoke volumes, more than most people could say in a whole conversation. Eli typed back slowly, "Tell her I'll make a cup soon." A minute later, another ping. She wants to visit the garage. Eli exhaled, long and slow. He walked over to the wood stove in the corner and sparked a small fire. Its warmth crept in like memory. From his jacket he pulled out a folded proposal, the one Charlotte had left him. He unfolded it carefully, the paper crackling under his fingers. At the top, in simple type, were the words, "The Dawson Initiative, in honor of those who fix what others throw away." He sat down and began to read. A knock on the garage door came softly, gentle, almost unsure of itself. Eli didn't move at first. He was elbow-deep in the engine of an old Chevrolet that hadn't made a sound since the Reagan era. The metallic rhythm of tools against rusted parts filled the air like a lullaby only he understood. The knock came again. 3 slow, deliberate taps. He wiped his hands on a rag, walked over and opened the door expecting the mailman, or maybe Jerry from the diner needing help with his snowblower again. It was neither. Standing there in a navy wool coat and dark jeans was Charlotte Lennox. She looked like she belonged in a boardroom or an art gallery, not in a dimly lit garage with cracked concrete and engine grease. But there was something different about her today. She looked softer, less guarded, less armored, more human. "Hey," she said gently. "You're up," Eli said with a nod. "I was discharged 2 days ago. They wanted me to recover in Denver, but I had somewhere else to be." He stepped aside without a word, letting her enter. She moved slowly, taking in the smells, the clutter, the wood smoke curling in the air, and the rows of tools lined up like old friends with nicknames. "This is it?" she asked. "This is home." Charlotte let her eyes wander around the space. "It's nothing like my world." "I figured," Eli replied. She smiled faintly. "But Maya talks about it like it's a castle." That made him chuckle softly. Kids see things differently. She's not the only one. There was a pause between them, thick with quiet but free of tension. "Coffee?" Eli asked. "Only if it's terrible." "It's awful," he confirmed, "but hot." They sat on mismatched stools by the workbench as Eli poured coffee from an old tin thermos. No cream, no sugar. Charlotte didn't ask. She took a sip and winced. "This is worse than hospital coffee." "I told you." She laughed, just a little, and with that laugh, a layer of her fell away. For a long time they sat in companionable silence. The fire crackled softly. Somewhere a bolt clinked to the floor. Then she spoke again. "I came to say thank you, but I realize that's not enough." "You don't owe me anything," Eli said. "I disagree. You gave my daughter something I couldn't. Safety, warmth, a place to sleep, someone who listened." "She's a good kid. She's everything to me," Charlotte said, voice wavering just slightly, "and I nearly lost her." She stared into the fire. "I spent years building walls around our lives, bodyguards, gates, layers of digital security, and still she ended up barefoot in the woods. And you, some stranger with a quiet voice and a wrench, you saved her." Eli looked down. "I didn't save her. She found me." Charlotte nodded slowly. "Maybe that's true, but it changed everything." From her coat she drew out a worn folder, the same one she'd left him. "The Dawson Initiative. You read it?" "I did. And?" "It's good, really good. But Charlotte, I'm just a mechanic. I don't do vision statements. I fix brake lines." She leaned forward, eyes steady. "That's exactly why you should lead it." He stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or protest. "I've spent years in rooms full of people who talk fast and say nothing. But when Maya talks about you, she doesn't mention tools. She talks about your stillness, your kindness. That's what people need, especially the ones who are broken in ways no wrench can fix." Eli said nothing, but something in him stirred, something ancient and tender and terrifying. "You don't have to answer today," Charlotte said. "But know this, I'm not asking you to become anyone else. I'm asking you to be you, just for more people." There was a knock at the garage again, and Charlotte smiled. "She's outside, wouldn't let me come in alone." Eli blinked. "Maya?" Charlotte opened the door, and there she was, Maya, standing just off the gravel, a paper bag cradled in her hands like a treasure. "Eli!" she shouted, voice ringing like sunshine through trees. She sprinted toward him, her coat flying behind her, and threw her arms around him. "We brought donuts," she grinned. "Mama let me pick the flavors." Eli crouched to her level. "Best news I've heard all day." She opened the bag and pulled out a misshapen donut with pink frosting and an explosion of sprinkles. "This one's yours," she said proudly. "I told the lady it was for someone important." Eli blinked and then smiled. Behind him, Charlotte stood quietly, watching her daughter and the man who had changed both their lives, not with money or speeches, but with a wrench, a warm fire, and his presence. No headlines, no fanfare. Just the beginning of something they didn't yet have words for, but already knew was real. The garage had never seen this much light, or maybe it always had. Eli was only now beginning to notice. Later, Maya chased a pine cone across the gravel, while Charlotte leaned against the frame of the garage, arms crossed, smiling. It was a Tuesday, but it felt nothing like any Tuesday Eli had known in years. Back at the workbench, Eli returned to the Dodge Caravan, trying to focus on the bad starter, but the laughter in the background kept pulling at his thoughts. It was real, unfiltered, not about money or status. Charlotte walked in and set a lunch bag on the bench. Sandwiches, she said. Maya insisted yours needed extra pickles. She's got a gift, Eli replied with a smile. She thinks I'm her hero. He wiped his hands on a rag. I'm just a guy with a toolbox. Charlotte picked up a screwdriver absently. You know, the day she was born, I was on a video call with investors in Singapore, had to mute the line between contractions. Eli raised an eyebrow. I was obsessed, she admitted, with holding everything together, companies, charts, success metrics. And now, Eli asked, now? Success is letting your daughter smear jelly on your car seat and not even caring. He chuckled. I never thanked you properly, she said. You don't have to. I do, but not with money or medals. That's not what you value. She met his gaze. I came to make an offer, but not the one in the folder. He leaned against the counter. Go on. I want to build something with you, not just fund the garage. I want a partner with purpose. Eli blinked. You mean business? I mean something that matters, she said. You fix engines, I fix systems. What if we did both? He looked around the garage, skeptical. You think a woman like you could work out of a place like this? Charlotte stepped closer. A woman like me is tired of people who talk in metrics. I want pine-scented mornings. I want to matter. He stared at her, then nodded slowly. Let's say I believe you. Let's say I'm in. What's the first step? Charlotte smiled. We start with one car, one story, one person. Just then, Maya burst through the door, cheeks flushed. Mama, Eli, there's a bunny in the shed. They both laughed. Charlotte turned to him. You in? Eli looked at Maya, then back at her. Her eyes were open now, unguarded, and full of hope. I'm in, he said. She extended a hand. They shook. Not a contract, a covenant. That night Eli sat by the fire sketching out dreams, redesigning the back bay into a teaching space, jotting ideas, letting hope take shape. The sky turned lavender, and outside nothing had changed. But inside this man, inside this garage, everything had. Possibility had finally found a home. Charlotte's gaze didn't move from the distant line of snowy peaks brushing the horizon. It sneaks up on you, she murmured. Eli, seated beside her in the fading evening light, replied softly, and then suddenly, you find you need it. Charlotte nodded, slowly. I used to run from silence, she admitted, her voice like wind through dry leaves. I filled every quiet second with meetings, breaking news tickers, endless voices. I thought noise meant progress, that it proved I was moving forward. But silence isn't the same as emptiness, is it? She asked, not expecting an answer. No, Eli said, shaking his head gently. Sometimes it's the only thing honest enough to keep you from falling apart. Charlotte inhaled those words. Let them sit heavy inside her. The kind of silence stretched between them now wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of pause that people either rushed past or chose to stay in because it felt like truth. I told you Maya and I were headed to a cabin that night, she began again, carefully choosing each word. Eli nodded. That was true. But what I didn't tell you, she continued, was that we weren't just going on a trip. We were running. Though her voice was even, Eli could hear the thread of pain buried beneath it, like a tremor beneath still water. There was a man, she said, someone I trusted. We co-founded part of Cygnus together. He was brilliant, magnetic, ambitious, but I never saw the darkness until it was right in front of me, until it was wrapped around us. She stared at her lap, at hands that had unconsciously curled into fists. He started using his position to get closer to Maya. At first, it was just small things, strange remarks, too subtle to prove but sharp enough to shake you. I kept second-guessing my instincts. Eli didn't interrupt. He let her keep going. Then one night, our driver found a GPS tracker taped beneath Maya's car seat. When I confronted him, he laughed, said it was for her safety. That's when I knew. He wasn't just a bad partner. He was dangerous. She looked away, her shoulders tense, her words heavier now. I bought the cabin under a different name. I packed up the car by midnight. No security detail, no headlines, just me and Maya. I thought I could keep her safe. Her voice caught, cracked, not a sob, just a fault line breaking open. Then the road gave out. There was the crash. I woke up in the hospital with 6 fractured ribs and no sign of my daughter. That sliver of heartbreak in her voice was small, but Eli felt it like thunder. He didn't touch her, didn't intrude. Instead, he leaned in slightly, quietly closing the space between them. I failed her, Eli, Charlotte whispered, staring at the mountains but seeing none of it. With all my influence, my access, my money, I still couldn't protect my own daughter. You didn't fail her, Eli said gently. Charlotte turned to him then. Her eyes were glassy with unshed tears, but fiercely determined. Then why did she end up barefoot and freezing, knocking on a stranger's garage door? Eli didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked toward the peaks alongside her. I've pulled people out of burning buildings, he said. Some made it, some didn't. But the ones who lived, they always remembered the hand that reached for them, not the fire. Charlotte blinked, her expression shifting. She remembers you, Charlotte, Eli said, and she remembers she got out. That says more than failure ever could. They sat in the quiet again, but it was different now. Full, a kind of peace stretched between them. Then Charlotte let out a soft laugh and wiped at her eyes with the corner of her sleeve. You always talk like that, she said, her tone teasing, warm. Like what? He asked. Like you spent 20 years collecting wisdom from fortune cookies in the forest. Eli smirked. Only the good ones. They both laughed, a quiet, genuine laugh that wrapped around them like a shared blanket. I've never told that story before, she said after a pause. Not to my board. Not even to my attorney. I don't know why I just did. Eli looked at her, steady and calm. Maybe you needed to say it to someone who doesn't need anything from you. Her gaze softened. You're wrong about that, she replied. I do need something. He raised a brow. I think I need this, she said. This quiet, this space, this reminder that not everything has to be a battlefield. Eli looked down at his hands. I've been at war with silence for a long time too, he said, until Maya came in and gave it a name. They stayed like that until stars blinked awake in the sky and their breath turned to mist. Eventually, Charlotte stood. I should take her home. She'll fall asleep in 10 minutes, and I'll have to carry her inside like a sack of potatoes. Eli chuckled. Bet she still calls you Mama the Strong. Only when I bribe her with marshmallows. At the car, she paused, one hand on the door. You're a good man, Eli. He didn't reply with humor or flattery, just a quiet nod. And you, he said, are one hell of a mother. She held his eyes a beat longer than necessary, something unspoken lingering, then got in and drove away. Her tail lights disappeared down the gravel, leaving Eli standing in the stillness. The air still carried the warmth of her story. He didn't know where the road was leading, but for the first time in years, he wanted to follow it. Later, the garage smelled like garlic, brown butter, and a memory Eli hadn't touched in years. It reminded him of his mother's Sunday suppers, how the neighborhood kids used to hover around the screen door hoping for leftovers. But this meal wasn't made by his hands. It was Charlotte's. She moved through his little kitchen like it was her own, apron tied haphazardly around her waist, sleeves rolled up like a woman who wasn't afraid to get things done. Eli had offered to help. You fix engines, I fix pasta, she'd said with a wink, stripped of all corporate armor. Maya sat at the workbench they were using as a dining table, crayons strewn across the surface. She was drawing what looked like a flying car with bunny ears. Needs more sprinkles, she declared, holding it up for Eli's inspection. Sprinkles on a spaceship? He asked. It's a dessert rocket, she said with a grin. The room echoed with happy noise, crayons scraping, pasta bubbling, laughter tumbling through the air. It was a sound Eli hadn't realized he missed. They ate together under the yellow shop light. The food was simple, but something about it tasted like home. You didn't have to cook, Eli said after wiping his mouth. I did, Charlotte replied. My mother used to say, feed the people you love, or at least the ones who saved your ass with a wrench. Maya giggled mid-noodle. You eat like you haven't seen a meal in weeks, Eli teased. She has, Charlotte said with a soft smile, but hospital food tastes like flavored sadness. Later, as Maya curled into the armchair beneath a patchwork quilt, eyelids heavy with safety and comfort, Charlotte looked at her daughter with something fierce and fragile all at once. She's different here, she said. She told me this place helps her breathe, Eli replied. She doesn't say things like that often, Charlotte whispered. Not since. Eli set the plate down. You ever wish you could go back? Choose differently? He asked. Charlotte didn't answer right away. She picked up a dish towel, drying a plate slowly. I used to think I could outpace regret, she said. If I built enough, worked enough, maybe I could raise her in a fortress. She looked toward Maya again. But she didn't need a fortress. She needed a dinner table. Eli nodded. We all do, and someone who sees us, not our title. Charlotte agreed. Yeah, someone who sees us. Later that night, Charlotte gathered Maya in her arms. Eli opened the truck door as she tucked her daughter inside, gently, like laying down the most precious part of her soul. Before leaving, she turned to him, not with gratitude, not with obligation, but with something deeper. Thank you for letting us in. You didn't need an invitation, he said. You just showed up. She smiled. Sometimes that's the bravest thing we do. Then she reached into her coat, pulled out a small note, and pressed it into his hand. For later. As her truck disappeared into the night, the only sound left was the crunch of gravel beneath tires and the lingering scent of garlic and crayons. Eli stood in the doorway, still holding the note. He unfolded it. In uneven block letters it read, Dear Eli, thank you for fixing engines and hearts. Love, Maya. His throat tightened. It wasn't the kind of thank you that earned awards. It was the kind that stayed with you forever. It was the kind of note that didn't land in your hand. It rooted in your ribs. And Eli Dawson, once a man surrounded by silence and solitude, realized that tonight wasn't just a shared meal. It was the beginning of something real, something that looked a lot like family. He hadn't slept much the night before. His mind had been too full of thoughts, worries and memories that wouldn't let him rest. When morning broke, casting pale light across the gravel lot, Eli found Charlotte already waiting by the back bay door. She wore dark sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low, as if trying to shield herself from more than just the sun. Her stance was tense, stiff with control. Maya sat in the passenger seat of the truck, legs swinging, her heels tapping rhythmically against the dash as she hummed some tune that only made sense to her. You should have told me, Eli said as he approached, his voice low but firm. Charlotte took off her sunglasses slowly, revealing eyes that had seen more than they'd ever let on. I didn't want to drag you into this, she replied, her voice quiet. You didn't have to, he said. I was already in. She nodded, acknowledging the truth of it without argument. You okay? He asked, watching her carefully, reading the edges of her calm for any cracks. Shaken, she said softly, but not broken. Are you running again? Their eyes met, steady, unflinching. Not this time, she answered. Just repositioning. Then she pulled something small from her pocket and handed it to him. A key fob. Simple, plain. We bought the lot next door, she explained. Kept it quiet, no names attached. The team converted the back unit into a secure space. You'll still be in Ashford, just watched over. Eli stared at the keys, processing the weight of what they represented. I don't want bodyguards, he said. You won't see them, Charlotte replied. But they'll be there, for Maya too. She's coming back next week, wants to paint the side of your garage with stars. That last part made his mouth twitch, almost a smile. I got a call, he murmured. I know, Charlotte said. Harlan briefed me. I didn't like what he said. Neither did I. Eli stepped a little closer. You still want to build this? Even if it paints a target on your back? Charlotte didn't blink. Especially then. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of decisions made without words, full of trust, of something unspoken and profound. Then Eli reached out, and for the first time since it all began, he took her hand, firm, steady. Not a gesture of romance, not yet, but something just as powerful. It was an agreement, a partnership, a promise, and perhaps the quiet start of something else, something that hadn't yet found its name. Behind them, Maya leaned out the truck window. Can we have spaghetti again tonight? She asked. Eli chuckled. Only if you promise. No sprinkles this time. But it was space spaghetti, she protested. Charlotte turned to him, smiling. We're staying at the cabin. It's secure now. You could come by. Just dinner. Just normal. He nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. As the truck pulled away, Eli stood there at the edge of the lot, key fob in one hand, the weight of the future in the other. The world had knocked again, and this time he wasn't pretending he didn't hear it. 6 months later, the garage looked nothing like it once had. The old, flaking Dawson's Auto sign was gone, replaced with a hand-painted wooden sign that read, The Dawson Initiative, Repairs with Purpose. And just beneath it, in smaller letters, the words, No one gets left behind. Inside, the air still smelled of motor oil and old metal, but now it mingled with fresh coffee, toasted breakfast sandwiches, and Thanks to Maya's toaster oven experiments, cinnamon rolls, always dusted with too much brown sugar. The once solitary, cluttered space had come alive. It was now a pulse, a rhythm, a living thing. The back bay had been turned into a hybrid space, a classroom, a workshop, a sanctuary. Veterans, teenagers on probation, out-of-work mechanics, they all stood at workstations, sleeves rolled, hands covered in grease, eyes carrying something new, hope. There were no uniforms, no lectures, just honest work, healing in its quiet way. Eli walked slowly across the floor, his boots tapping softly against the clean concrete. He didn't say much, he never did, but the room stilled when he passed, not out of fear, out of respect. Some called him boss, others Mr. D, and a few just the guy who listens. He still wasn't used to the attention. But he understood now, leadership wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was the person who simply stood steady when the rest of the world didn't. In one corner, Felix, a former diesel tech who hadn't held steady work in 5 years, was teaching a young woman how to change brake pads. Her hands trembled less than they had a month ago. Eli watched them with a quiet pride, not for himself, for them, for what this had become. At the front desk, Charlotte sat cross-legged, scrolling through grant applications. She looked different now, softer. Her suits had been traded for cardigans and jeans, heels for boots. She hadn't lost her sharpness, but now it cradled something deeper, something grounded. When she looked up and saw Eli, she smiled, that kind of smile that made a man feel like he was home. A shipment came in from Denver, she said. Filters, and the new lift for the accessible bay. Eli nodded. We'll install it this weekend. She paused, watching him. You know you're really doing it, right? Doing what? Changing lives, she said. You've put 5 people back into full-time work, while 2 kids off the streets. And Maya's convinced half the county that your garage is where lost things get found. Eli chuckled. She's not wrong. He picked up a clipboard, but before he could say more, a small voice called from outside. Hey, come see! It was Maya, standing by her mural on the side wall. What had started as chaotic stars and swirls had transformed into something breathtaking, a mechanic's hand holding a wrench that gently cradled a heart. Above it, in her neat handwriting, were the words, "Kindness repairs more than machines." I finished it, she beamed. Eli looked at the wall, then at her. It's perfect. That star, she said, pointing, that's you, and that one's Mama. The big one? She leaned in, whispering like it was a secret. That's Jasper. Eli felt a lump rise in his throat. You gave me a safe place, Maya whispered. Now it's for everyone. He bent down and hugged her gently. You gave it its heart, he whispered back. Behind them, Charlotte watched, arms crossed, eyes soft. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. She was witnessing something grow. Not a business, but a home. That evening, folding chairs were set up outside. Edison bulbs twinkled between pine trees. Someone brought pie. Someone else a guitar. Community night had begun. Eli stood at the edge of it all, holding a paper plate, wondering when this had become his life. Charlotte joined him with a cup of cider. Still thinking about running, she teased. Every 10 minutes, he said. You won't. No, he agreed. I won't. From the crowd, a voice rang out. Speech from the man who started it all. Eli groaned. No way. Charlotte nudged him forward. Just a few words. He stepped up reluctantly. The crowd hushed. Even the dog stopped barking. I'm not much for speeches, he began. Soft laughter. He looked around at the worn, weathered, brave faces. At second chances and the strength they'd found in each other. This place started because a little girl walked into my garage, he said. I didn't know it then, but she brought more than a story. She brought purpose. And if you're here today, it means you brought some of that too. He paused. We fix cars here, but more than that, we fix the stories that brought people to the edge. We give folks a reason to stay. He glanced at Maya, grinning, at Charlotte, standing beside him. So thank you, for showing up, for trusting this old garage, and for letting me believe in people again. The applause that followed was deep and real. That night, beneath the stars and strings of light, Eli Dawson wasn't just a mechanic, he was the center of something true. Morning came gently. Dew kissed the pine needle, soft mist clung to the hills before lifting like a curtain. In Ashford, life moved slowly, but something had changed. The garage doors were already open, coffee brewed, a box of muffins sat on the step. No note, but everyone knew they were from Mrs. Delaney, who hadn't missed a Thursday in months. Inside, Eli cradled his coffee, watching Maya paint a toolbox green. "You missed a spot," he said. "I'm doing texture," she replied, tongue poking out in focus. "Master artist," he said solemnly. Charlotte appeared behind them, folder in hand. "The mayor's office called again," she said. "Third time." Eli replied, "They want to name a park after you. I don't need a bench with my name on it." She smiled. "No, but you gave people a place to sit. That matters." They looked at each other, familiar now, a language of quiet trust. "I'm hungry," Maya declared. "You're always hungry," Eli said. "Because I'm growing. A big brain," she grinned. Charlotte tousled her hair. "Let's go feed it." They walked to the diner, where the waitress knew their names, and Maya always got extra whipped cream. Afterward, they passed the garage's newest trainee painting the gate. Eli saw it, in their eyes, their posture. People were healing. At the top of the hill, they sat in the grass. Maya sketched stars on the garage roof. Charlotte turned to Eli. "She asked me yesterday if she could call this home." He looked over the valley. "Isn't it already?" Charlotte reached for his hand. "No permission. Just love." "I never expected this," she said. "Neither did I," he replied. "But I'm glad it happened, with you." They sat in silence, not as emptiness, but peace. Below, a soft engine turned over. Laughter carried on the wind. The world moved on, and so did they. Not away from what was, but toward what could be. A mechanic, a mother, a child. Not just survivors, builders of something lasting, something true. And as Maya whispered, "This is the best day ever," Eli smiled. It was, and for once, he didn't need to fix a thing.